I'm here with Matt of Atavistia to talk about Cosmic Warfare, the upcoming new record out April 21st on Blood Blast Distribution. How are you doing today?
Very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So let's talk about this album. Let me start off by asking you, where do you see the biggest changes and perhaps the biggest growths from the debut record to now this third album?
No, that's a good question. Expanding my influences is the biggest one. And just kind of saying, screw it when it comes to song structure, and just whatever's in my head at the time kind of just gets recorded.
Can you expand on that in terms of the first statement that you said, that in terms of influences? Because I feel like when the band started, a lot of people compared you guys with Winter Sun as far as the sound is concerned. But after
Yeah.
I listened to this album, I don't think that's the case anymore. There's a lot more to digest. There's a lot more textures in the sound. There's definitely a lot more influences, if you will. So can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Absolutely. Well, when I first wrote One Within the Sun, the debut album, I was 17, 18 years old at the time, and my obsession was Winter Sun, obviously. So I just find the older I get, I'm coming up on 28 now, so it's almost 10 years later, my influences have expanded exponentially. So it's much easier to tap into other influences and not be dialed in on such a specific want, if that makes sense.
When you look at the progression that these three records have offered you, because you definitely see a sense of growth from album to album in terms of how you approach the songwriting process, in terms of how you approach even the construction of the record. Do you have a clear image of where you're going next? Is there a clear road ahead of you, or not so much?
It's a overgrown road. So I don't exactly know where it leads. I don't know if I'm going to break my ankle on the way. But yeah, right now I have two albums after Cosmic Warfare that are being worked on at the moment, and they're vastly different from Cosmic Warfare even. So I like to keep similarities between each album, but it's important to try new things as a band and not get stuck doing the same thing, but at the same time not go too far to where people won't even recognize the band for what they are.
When you're trying to push the envelope and keeping in mind that you don't want to go too far, is it easier to change a little bit here and a little bit there from album to album to finally get you to where you want to go versus doing a very drastic change from one record to the next?
Absolutely. I find it's very important just to try new things on certain songs, and if they work, it's really fun to explore those paths on further albums.
What were some of the unique challenges and difficulties that this album brought to you?
Well, my mindset at the time, because I started writing these songs right before we released The Winter Way, and then COVID hit, and then it was just my mental health kind of took a downturn. I was very depressed. I didn't know if I saw a future with music for myself, and it was just a very depressing time. But I don't know, I found there's a lot of aggression in these songs in Cosmic Warfare, and I think people can get a sense where my head was at the time.
Going through that depression, going through that darker period of your life when you're putting this album together, did you take any lessons from that experience that not only help you develop yourself as an artist, but also as a person?
Not to sound too cliche, but in the darkest of times is when some of the best material is written, in my opinion. So
that is true. There's no
yeah.
cliche there. That is just a fact.
Yeah, but at the same time, with the music that I've been writing lately, I've been in a better mood than I've ever been. And you can hear it, that it sounds more uplifting in a way, but it's still epic and heavy.
In this album, the first thing that I notice about this record, comparing to the two previous ones, is that it's a darker album. It just sounds darker. It feels darker. It just has this sense of darkness to it. Now you can argue that there's different shades of gray depending on which song you're listening to, but it's still dark nevertheless. Has the darkness now left you behind with this album, and we're going to see a little bit more of a brighter, epic sound moving forward?
Good question. Yes and no. So the album after this one, it has some darker moments for sure, but there is more subtle uplifting moments than in Cosmic Warfare. Granted, there are some uplifting moments in Cosmic Warfare, so honestly, it's probably about the same.
Now that you get to think about it.
Yeah.
You started in one direction, and then halfway through you did a U-turn and you went back to right to the beginning.
Story of my life.
When you look at this record, when you look at the individual songs that the record offers, how important for you, or maybe how difficult it is to give each song their own fingerprint, their own individuality, but at the same time keeping in mind the overall umbrella that encompasses the entire album?
Another good question. So when putting this album together, I actually had all of the songs for the next album just there as well, and I kind of just picked and choose which ones fit to be, Cosmic Warfare and then the album after. Yeah, just mainly on the distinctive melodies and rhythmic structures and whatnot. I just found that the ones that we decided on for Cosmic Warfare just fit it perfectly.
When I hear you talking about the next two records, I have to ask you, are you going to start doing some status updates on Facebook about what percentage of the album is done and what percentage of the other album is done? Is that something you're planning on doing?
Yeah. So once we release Cosmic Warfare, we'll give that some time, and then we'll start rolling out stuff about the next album, because I think with the next album, we're not going to wait a couple years like we did in between the Winter Way and Cosmic Warfare. I think we're going to hopefully shoot by the end of next year, because it's these two albums, Cosmic Warfare and the one after, are soft concept albums. They're not it's not a part one, part two kind of thing, but some can consider that, just because some of the songs sound so similar and the story kind of follows what happens in Cosmic Warfare. So yeah, it's a soft concept. So we don't want to keep the releases too far away from each other.
That makes sense. Is there a song on this album that was a little bit extra challenging to go from your vision to what the final product needed to be?
Not in particular, but what really helped Cosmic Warfare was I had a lot of input from the band, whereas before I was just kind of, the band would play what I write, and now I want their influence and input and their styles to fit certain parts. So the two tracks that I think had the most help was Divine Destruction and Forgotten Silence. There was a lot of input that I originally didn't have, and it was really nice because it opened up my ears to new ideas and possibilities. And in Forgotten Silence, there's a section where it's just all low growls, and I never did that before, and it was suggested that I did that, and it was really cool. So
I've talked with you about the debut record, and I think we can look at that album and say that the band at the time, outside of the influence, had almost like a traditional melodic death metal sound. Listening to this record now, I feel like there's a little bit more of a symphonic death metal experience all around. Not to say that there isn't still melodic death metal, influences into the sound, but it feels like it's moving more towards a symphonic death metal experience. Do you concern yourself with those kind of titles, with those kind of umbrellas?
it's very difficult to put our band in a title. Whenever somebody asks, I just say melodic death metal because it's easy. There's melodies, there's screaming, there's epicness, but you could go down the metal genre rabbit hole, if you will. But I don't really have a concern. It's just wherever it leads, and whoever calls us whatever, I'm okay with.
Having that influence at an early age when you wrote that first record, is there a band right now that is an influence on you? Is a band that you really like what they're doing and you feel like they're perhaps a little bit in the forefront of whatever the genre is that they're behind?
Absolutely. My biggest influence right now, I would say, is Brimir and Keep of Callison.
Wow, two great bands.
Yeah. And
I'm
I
stoked
just,
that you said Premier because I
yeah,
love those guys and I've been listening to them for a very long time. I've got to see them live. I know the folks in the band really well, and I feel like they're completely underrated, specifically on this side of the planet. Not a lot of people know about them in North America. So
hmm
really cool that you give them a shout out.
yeah, absolutely. Well, they've been in a huge influence for the past couple of years, and especially after their last two albums, it was, I don't know, it just mind blowing. So, uh, the stuff I've actually been writing last night and this morning is, some would call it a Brimir ripoff now, but we'll see. We'll see what the future beholds.
One of the things I noticed about this album is the production behind it. Not that I was surprised because you've always managed to have great production behind the albums. This one is no different. What's the secret for that specific element that's so important for a band that has the soundscape that you provide?
A lot of a lot of listening to other bands, and bringing certain songs from bands you're trying to have the same production quality as, bring a song into the session and see what you're doing wrong and see what you could change to, not make it sound the same, but just try to, yeah, EQing and yeah, all that jazz.
Do you you said that now you like to get feedback from the band, so are you becoming less and less of a lone wolf when it comes to creating these masterpieces?
um I don't want to consider myself a lone wolf. It's a little pretentious. I just want to stay away from, it's like, oh, it's me, it's my band, it's I'm the whole band. But in saying so, I do still write the majority of all the music, like the song structuring. And of course, I'll take ideas from the band if they think that a certain part needs to be shortened or extended or changed. But I still like to roll out what I'm hearing in my head. And I feel like that works with all of us. We all agree to it, and yeah, it's working out well.
When it comes to the lyrical content, how do you approach? Do you approach an album at a time in terms of what do you want the message of that album to hold, or do you have a little notebook that you write some ideas down when something comes to you?
Yeah, I like to just brainstorm quite a bit. I have like a little lyric book, and whenever I finish a song and I want to start writing lyrics, I'll do like the typical brainstorm thing. So I'll try to come up with a name first, and then just like spit out ideas around it, and then just kind of go from there. But I don't call myself the best lyricist in the world. I feel like there's a lot that I have up in here that doesn't come out well in my voice, and yeah,
Is
not the
that your
best
least
talker.
favorite part when it comes to creating music and eventually putting an album together?
um I think that just the best feeling when creating music, whether it be lyrics or anything, is when you hear it back and it gives you goosebumps. That's the coolest feeling ever. When it's your own music, because I'm very critical on myself. There's a lot of times where I hear my music, I'm like, this is shit. But there's certain times, especially once the mixes were just about finalized for Cosmic Warfare, that we would do listening sessions as the band, and there'd be certain times where like I'd look at my arm, it would be goosebumps. I'd look at Dalton, the other guitarist, his arm would be goosebumps, and we'd just be like, okay, we're this feels nice.
You're on the right track.
Absolutely.
You guys are doing some West Coast tour dates.
Mhm.
When can we expect you guys to expand your horizons and come a little bit towards the East Coast?
Hopefully as soon as possible. We're itching to expand further than the damn West Coast. So, uh, yeah, hopefully early 2024, maybe. But it's just, you know, the finances and the business side of a band is not my favorite suit. So that kind of stuff has to be really locked in. And I really just want to play music. And it's very frustrating when the finances kind of hold us back from expanding, because there's a lot of people that want us to come to the States, Europe especially. And it's just finances at this point.
Is that the downside of being an artist, that you're more focused on the creativity and not as focused on the dollar signs?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an issue in my mind, but in reality it is. Because money is everything in this world. So if you don't have the funds to go somewhere, it's impossible.
Now, being a Canadian band, does that add even more difficulty to an already difficult and challenging process to get you guys touring, to get you guys on the road?
Absolutely, especially that we're unsigned and we don't have the backing of a label to help us in that regard. It's very difficult to actually fund and organize these things out of pocket. I am lucky enough to have 3 different citizenships. So I'm a citizen of the US, Canada, and Finland. But it doesn't help my band, because if we're to tour the States, we need to apply as a band with a band visa. And I'm not gonna, not pitch in for that. Like, that's ridiculous. So it's still, yeah, I would say just getting to the States and getting all the visas and everything that's the biggest hurdle at the moment.
What could be done for bands like yours, to make things easier? Is there something that somebody can do? Is there something that an organization should get behind? Like, where do you see us going? Like, there has to be a better solution for everything that bands have to go through.
Oh, there really should. The answer to that, though, I have no idea. My bassist Dwayne, he's got the business mind, so he would probably have a better answer. But I don't know, just an organization that helps bands expand. But I mean, they also need a profit as well, right? They can't just expect to exist without any source of income. So
It's difficult.
it's very difficult. Yeah.
Do you see the way things are going this way, especially after the pandemic, because things were harder before, things are even more difficult now. Is it becoming even more challenging, like you said, for a band that's unsigned to continue to create music, to continue to put music out there? Or do you find it that, at least with the internet and the availability of reaching fans a lot easier, that kind of makes up for the other difficulties?
Absolutely. It also all comes down to what your intentions are as an artist. If you want to be a touring artist, I find that's a lot more difficult. But if you're strictly just releasing music on the internet and sharing everything via social media, I feel that is a little more like, if that's your main goal and you don't really plan on touring or anything like that, I feel like the world we're in now is good enough. But if you want to actually hit the road, that's where the challenging part is.
You said earlier that it's difficult for an unsigned band to get out there. Are you guys currently unsigned because that's your choice? That's where you want to be, because nothing really that made you change your mind came your way, or is that something that you strive towards eventually? Maybe the next record or the record after that, you would like it to have perhaps a bigger distribution.
Oh, we're looking for labels at the moment. So, like, at first, my 17, 18-year-old ego was like, oh, I don't need a label. I'll just do everything independent. But now, the older I get, I'm like, reality check. I would happily, sacrifice certain aspects of my, my ego for sure, to, just have the ease of being on a label and then having them schedule tours for us. Like, that's just, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. So
I hope it happens. I hope it does.
Yeah,
I'm keeping my
me
fingers
too.
crossed for you guys. One
Thank you.
last question for you. When you look in the mirror,
Mhm.
do you look at yourself as a singer that plays guitar or a guitar player that happens to sing?
A guitarist that happens to sing, and then yeah, guitarist that happens to sing.
That's your comfort. That's where
Yeah,
you're.
for sure.
So that was it. That was my last question for you. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your taking this time with me to talk about the record, to talk about the band, to talk about yourself. Thank you. All the best with the release. Comes out April 21st on Blood Blast distribution. Matt, you're a gem. So I hope you guys find a way to make it to the East Coast, play some Toronto shows. I'm dying to see you guys play live. Thank you once again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care, man.